And now, ladies and gentlemen, we move into our plenary session 2, where the topic Sustaining and Scaling the Impact of the ACE Program, the Next Decade of Transformation, will be led by moderator Franz Dries-Gross, Acting Regional Practice Director for Africa Regional Integration, World Bank. Please warmly welcome Franz to the stage. And as Franz takes center stage, allow me to please welcome the panelists who will kindly join us upon hearing your name. Honorable Dr. Jesse Kabwira, Minister for Higher Education, Malawi. Honorable Murana Suma, Minister of Economy and Finance, Guinea. Professor Celestin Obua, Chairman of Uganda Examination Board and former Vice Chancellor, Mbarara University of Science and Technology. Professor Eric Dankwa, Center Leader, WACCI, Ghana. Mrs. Sophia Indemutela Ashipala, who is the Head of Education, African Union. And last, definitely not the least, the Higher Education Lead for Agence Française de Développement, Gabriel Leroux. Ladies and gentlemen, our 45 minutes begin now.
Good morning, everyone. Madam Vice President, Madam Vice Chancellor of the University of Ghana, esteemed colleagues, distinguished guests, ministers, vice chancellors, development partners, and friends. I wish you all Akwaba, welcome and bienvenue. It's an honor, a true honor, to welcome you all to the ACE at 10 celebration and to open the first plenary session of this day and indeed of this entire milestone event. Today marks not just a celebration of achievements, but a call to action for the future. Our hosts, the Association of African Universities, the IUCEA, along with our keynote speaker, have powerfully set the stage, reminding us of the tremendous progress made since the inception of the African Centers of Excellence program 10 years ago. The ACEs represent a continent-wide network of institutions that has not only been delivering high-quality postgraduate education and applied research, but doing that with relevance, with resilience, and with impact. As the acting regional director for regional integration at the World Bank, I'm especially pleased to witness the fruits of that collective action. How governments, universities, the private sector, and development partners have come together across borders to drive a bold regional agenda. The ACE initiative is a model of what's possible when we combine vision, political will, and technical excellence. But today, our job is to gaze forward. The future is bright and the potential even greater. Over the next decade, Africa's population will grow more educated, more connected, and more ambitious. And yet our challenges will become more complex, from climate change to digital transformation, from food insecurity to youth unemployment. This is the moment to ask, how can the ACE model evolve to meet the challenges of a rapidly changing continent? What does the next decade of transformation look like, and what will it take to sustain and to scale the momentum we've already built? This session we're about to hear is designed to spark that conversation. We're going to hear from a very distinguished panel of leaders, ministers of education and finance, vice chancellors and policy champions who will offer their insights not only on what's worked, but what must be done to unlock the next phase of impact. We invite them to reflect, yes, but more importantly, to project forward, to challenge conventional thinking, and to help shape a bold vision for higher education and research excellence across Africa. With that, I want to warmly welcome and introduce our panelists. We've introduced them, we'll go straight to the questions. Please, another warm round of applause for our panelists. That was the first test, just to find the microphone. Very good. So let's go now to our distinguished panel. We have Dr. Jessie Cabrera, Minister of Higher Education, Malawi. Dr. Cabrera, welcome. Some of our introductory remarks have talked about the remarkable achievements of the ACE program across Africa and the testament to how regional collaboration in higher education and research excellence has worked for the past decade. You're Minister of Higher Education in Malawi. How do you envisage the role of governments in building on the progress made by these centers? And what are some of the specific policies, investments, and partnerships that you think are essential to sustaining that impact over the next decade?
Thank you very much for having Malawi. As leader of the delegation from Malawi, I want to recognize the World Bank for supporting the ACE programs, which for us in Malawi started in 2016 as ACE2 project. I would have gone through the list of recognitions, but I think due to time, I would just say, let me recognize Inter-University Council of East Africa, IUCA, and the Regional Steering Committee, the Association of AAU, and I also want to recognize the Ghanaian government. That being said, you have said that how has the ACE projects really, assisted? For us in Malawi, I would speak without any contradiction that the ACE projects have helped even us leading government to deliver on the promises that we made to our people. Because the projects have really enhanced the capacity for higher education to actually contribute to creation of jobs and also be relevant to the Malawi 2063 agenda. If you come to Malawi right now, you see that the centers that you're working with are not only increasing access to higher education, which is a big challenge in Malawi and the whole of Africa, in the sense that higher education has been seen as an elitist project. When we take the colonial models that we came from, ACE has helped us not only to localize our knowledge production, but to own it and make sure that we align it to African values and Malawian values. Higher education was brought to this continent as a thing to save controlling of power for the African mind and containing it where it should be and where it would best serve the colonial project. But what the ACE project has done, the ACE innovation, has actually defined Malawi as the center of excellence, center of knowledge production, and much more important, center of equitable development. Because what Africa has not had is education that's accessible to all the classes, especially those at the bottom. Since we had this initiative, more so-called poor people, because this word is very problematic in this continent. It tends to put you at the bottom of everything. But let me say, those who are in the lower class, we've seen a narrowing of education, higher education, from the village to the lecture rooms. That has been shortened, and especially towards sciences. The other thing that we've seen is a good linkage with an agrarian economy, which is what Africa is based on. In Malawi, we have seen fisheries really going up and incubation centers being held, and the number of enrollment has really gone up. Now, it's just not scaling up of the numbers of enrollment, but quality. The accreditation that has come with it has reduced the stigma of an African university. Because most of the time, we've had people talk and they say, this one is a professor, and then they say an African professor, as if there's a white and European professor and then there's an African professor. But when you look at our institution like Luana, you look at the project they're doing, it has been accredited internationally. That's more like mainstreaming African education, so that there is nothing like an African degree or research is research, And this means quite a lot to someone like me who has fought a lot for women's rights. Every time people talk to you, they say mankind instead of just saying a human being, So even as Africans, I don't see why we should be having, an African degree or an African professor. And what this ACE project has done is to mainstream knowledge and show that the West is not the preserve of knowledge. It has shown that in Africa, we are able to incubate knowledge, we are able to produce knowledge. In fact, through this project, Africa has taken its rightful place as the cradle of humankind. It is now the cradle of knowledge production. So if you look at me as a politician and as an academic of established reputes, we've published papers. But what ACE has given us is African pride. I come from a country where the president is passionately fighting Afro-pessimism. You know, this picture that, oh, we are poor, we can't do anything. People think they should lead and we should follow. What the ACE project has done has shown that we have potential. And we know where we are going. And we are going to charter our own destiny. Yeah, so I think, I must say, maybe those who do not know the background of Malawi, the Minister of Higher Education is only 3 months old. But then the kind of, the president decided to put higher education as a ministry on its own for the reason, pure reason of what ACE is doing, to show that Malawi has potential to do its own agriculture, to bring up models that are not only owned by Malawians, but championed by Malawian Africans. So if you ask me what has it done, it has scaled up access, it has scaled up quality, but I would say unashamedly, it has scaled up Afro-optimism and pride in being a Malawian, in saying we are intellectuals, we are visionaries, we know what we are doing. And when you give me a chance to go and extend more, I would be giving the data, but I would say for now, it has increased African vision and belief that we are the center of knowledge production. Thank you.
Madam Minister. What a great way to start a panel like this. A call to African creation of knowledge, a call to access to higher education for people from lower tiers of society. Very stirring. Thank you, Minister. While you were speaking, I was handed a note saying we have to finish by 11:15 because the president is coming. So I'm going to ask all the subsequent speakers, please, if we can keep it to 4 or 5 minutes. I know you've got much more to say, but just in the interest of giving everybody a chance, let's go to 4 or 5 minutes. Let me go to our second speaker, the Honorable Mourana Souma. Bienvenue, the Minister of Economy and Finance of Guinea. Let me just say, we're all aware that Guinea has set out a very ambitious program of reforms called Simandu 2040, where education is identified as one of 5 priority areas of development. That includes in higher education to support public programs. The government already has 2 ACE centers and says we're going to create another 4 in agri-food, in energy, environmental technologies, and other areas. And Guinea, I think, is one of the countries, I think, relatively unusual on the continent that is committing to significantly increase funding for higher education. So, Minister, with all of that, and you're the finance minister, you're the guy who's supposed to be stingy with the purse strings.
Okay.
What makes you so convinced that this is a good investment? Over to you.
Ok. Merci pour la question très pertinente sur l'éducation en Guinée, en Afrique en général et dans les pays de l'Afrique de l'Ouest en particulier. Vous comprendrez aisément que la Guinée est dans une vision stratégique de développement intégré, dans un cadre de programme Vision Simandu 2040. Et le premier pilier de ce grand programme est bien sûr l'agriculture, donc le domaine agricole. La Guinée dispose de 13 millions de terres arables, donc une potentialité naturelle qu'il faut jumeler avec des centres de recherche et d'ingénierie agricole pour que l'autosuffisance tant recherchée soit une réalité. C'est pour cela que nous avions mis en place Comme deuxième pilier de ce programme, l'éducation, qui vient donc capitaliser les ressources tirées du programme minier vers un programme de développement. Ça veut dire, en réalité, il y aura la mise en place d'une académie qu'on appelle Simandou et qui prendra les 20% des revenus fiscaux que le programme minier va générer. Il y aura également 5% des recettes fiscales qui vont à l'éducation. Cela montre combien de fois les autorités, sous la houlette du général-président Mamadi Doumbouya, nous sommes à cheval de donner un capital humain qui puisse être le capital le plus précieux du développement, puisque les mines vont finir. La seule chose qui va rester, ce sont les ressources humaines. C'est pour cela que l'Académie Simandou sera adossée à ce qu'on appelle un fonds de développement du capital humain. Ça veut dire que ça converge déjà avec cette vision de centre d'excellence africain. C'est l'histoire pour moi de vous rappeler que depuis que j'étais juste chef de section à la Direction générale du Trésor, j'ai l'histoire de ce centre d'excellence. Je voyais et j'en faisais un point d'attention parce que je savais qu'il y avait, c'est vraiment l'avenir de l'Afrique, à condition que nous puissions assurer un autre financement, que ça soit beaucoup plus lié aussi à nos budgets, que ça puisse réduire davantage aussi forcément l'intervention des partenaires extérieurs. Il faut que nos budgets, nos espaces budgétaires qu'on arrive à dégager puissent aller dans le sens de la recherche scientifique, dans le sens des recherches agricoles, afin d'optimiser les dotations naturelles vers un développement plus équilibré. Ce centre d'excellence, pour la petite histoire, a connu également chez nous une gouvernance, j'allais dire, exemplaire. Monsieur le ministre de l'Enseignement supérieur, ici présent, en fait un point d'attention de sa gouvernance. C'est pour cela que tous les indicateurs irrélatifs ont été au rendez-vous au regard de notre mode de gestion par le biais d'une gouvernance axée sur la revue des portefeuilles, sur l'évaluation des portefeuilles et qui nous a permis d'avoir en fin d'année, à peu près, pas en fin d'année, après la dernière évaluation, nous sommes sur des taux d'exécution très élevés en taux d'écaissement, en taux d'exécution physique et d'autres indicateurs de gouvernance. Tout cela est le mérite d'une gouvernance axée sur les résultats. Pour donner quand même de l'espoir et donner un vivier d'ingénieurs qualifiés, un vivier de personnes qui peuvent nous aider à booster les compétences, à booster notre croissance économique. Il y a une corrélation très forte entre le capital humain d'un pays et son développement. Donc l'Afrique doit être, doit avoir ça comme un des piliers majeurs. Sinon, nous risquerons de ne pas bénéficier de toutes nos potentialités naturelles. Et donc, c'est une vision partagée des plus hautes autorités de la Guinée, dans la mesure où le budget et autres éléments de gestion vont en synergie avec forcément les centres d'excellence. C'est pour cela que nous demandons d'ailleurs de quitter de 2 centres d'excellence à 4. On a vu pour le Ghana ici, le Ghana est en 9. Donc nous souhaitons également avoir un pan de progression à l'effet de donner un plus grand poids à la formation, j'allais dire universitaire, à la formation professionnelle. Le ministre ici présent connaît suffisamment la structuration de ces centres parce qu'il vient de l'enseignement technique. Et donc, ça va être une consolidation de sa présence au niveau de l'enseignement supérieur. C'est pour cela que tous les appels d'intervention auprès des centres d'excellence sont répondus à la minute, puisque c'est là la vision du président, le général Mamadi Doumbouya. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Minister Sumwa, for that very inspiring statement. So we've heard Guinea's commitment to commit some of the royalties, the tax income, from a huge mining project called Simandou to education in Guinea. So let's shift our focus now. We've heard from two cabinet-level representatives, a Minister of Education, Minister of Finance, who in most countries is supposed to be cheap and very frugal, but making a bold commitment to education, which is wonderful to hear. But we're going to go now from the cabinet room to the university campus with our next two speakers. The first is Professor Celestin Obua. He's chairman of the Uganda Examination Board and former vice chancellor of Mbarara University of Science and Technology. Vice Chancellor, you've had a front row seat in these developments of the ACE centers over the last decade, a unique vantage point. And you've seen some of the things that have enabled the ACEs to succeed. Can you take us a step back and distill some of the lessons from that experience at your own university that you've been able to see? What's been key to this journey of excellence?
Thank you. Thank you, Moderator. All protocol observed. I have 3 or 4 minutes. So thank you very much for that question. To answer that question, I need us to take a few steps back to understand where we as universities came from. How did we get involved in the implementation of the program that was the African Centers of Excellence? The keynote speaker gave in one of the slides the comment to African heads of states to increase funding to sustain the Centers of Excellence. But I want to state that I think we need to appreciate the governments of the 20 countries that have participated in this decade of African Center of Excellence. You need to note that the World Bank gave a loan to our governments, and the governments gave grants to the universities to develop and implement their innovations, which we are celebrating today. So I think our governments need a round of applause. Now, that said, I am not downplaying the role that the World Bank has done, and I'm not downplaying other partners that have participated. As one of the universities that were part of the African Center of Excellence, our university was in the health sector, developing farm biotechnology in trying to ensure that traditional medicines and products is part and parcel of innovation and technology development to date. So we have the farm biotrack from Mbarara University of Science and Technology. We were working towards ensuring that our traditional medicines and herbal medicine practice takes center front or center stage in health systems in Uganda and in the African region as a whole. And how was that possible? I would want anybody who has never used any traditional medicine, including eating herbal plants in Africa, to raise their hand to say they have never eaten any food made from greens. Our local greens, some of them are bitter, some are sweet, and so on. All these are medicines. So our center looked at the practice of these traditional healers. How can we enhance development? 2, how can we make it academic so that the tradition of downplaying the role that herbal medicine plays in our health is completely put aside, so that we begin to believe that there is science in traditional medicine practice. Developing academic programs to which we had over 32 PhDs graduate in traditional medicine practices, some of whom are from countries from West Africa. For the first time, we had students from Benin, from Guinea, from Cameroon, and so on, which traditionally would never have stepped in Uganda to study anything. So we even overcame the issue of language barrier because indeed we had students who were rather deficient in English, but they came to get skills in what they were studying. So as a university, we have been able to develop a very robust ecosystem of traditional medicine practice, learning, and skills development. One of the 4 incubation centers that Gaspard talked about is hosted by Mbari University of Science and Technology on traditional medicine. One of the key developments of our incubators are incubatees from Nigeria, incubatees from Ethiopia, incubatees from Tanzania, Kenya, and so on. And this alone speaks volumes because one, when we talk about the COVID-19 that ravaged the whole world, in Uganda locally, one of the scientists in our Farm Biotech Center of Excellence developed a treatment, which later on became a regional treatment, which went by the name Covidex. So I don't know whether you can go and Google Covidex. It has been a household name within the East African region. And this is using knowledge that herbal medicines may not necessarily kill the virus, but they can influence the way the body handles the infection. In other words, improving your immune system to make it possible to overcome the devastation that the virus would have caused in our system. And so, 2, the incubation centers, it was not only incubating academicians, but incubating traditional healers to come and practice skills on how they can improve on the packaging, the harvesting, the conservation of the plants that they use for sustainability of these plants. Because one, some of the methods in which these traditional medicines are harvested would kill the whole plant. Because if you remove the roots, then the plant dies. But how can you sustainably harvest the same to ensure that it continues to survive, thrive, so that tomorrow you can come back and harvest the same plant for more medicines development? 3, we have been able to bring on board local industry that are interested in the development of medicines. And this has been key because working with the local industry, some of whom are already fairly established within the region, that is what made the production of Covidex marketable, not only within Uganda, but outside Uganda. And we want to believe that in the conceptualization of the ACE, the sustainability component was inbuilt. And to me, I want to believe that going forward into the next decade, there was the issue of funding that was given. But you see, that's like planting a tree. It has germinated, but we need to continue to water it. And to ensure that this is done, yes, our governments have challenges, but we want to believe that our partners, development partners, have seen all these reports that have been presented this morning. Is already indication that it was money well spent within these institutions. And I want to believe that just like I would want Bara University to get more money to make this Center of Excellence continue to do what it is doing, I want to believe that additional water needs to be added to this tree to make it blossom and continue to grow. One of the living systems that live beyond, and maybe many years beyond human beings, are the plants. And I think you can have plants that are over 2,000 years old. I've not yet found a human being more than 200 years old, maybe in some cycles. So we want to believe that, yes, while we implore our countries, our governments to give us a little more money, I would want to say that the partners that have made it possible for the centers to come on board should not throw out the baby with the bathwater. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Obwa. I think you bring out a really important point about part of the reason for success in Uganda and elsewhere is that connection with industry, right? To make sure that the industry is actually in tune with the research done at the university and the link is there. I remember reading one statistic just in the 10-year celebration that over 10 years, there's been 18,000 industrial internships created under the ACE initiative, which shows how relevant some of the research is for industries. So let's go to the next speaker who's deeply involved in relevance and on-the-ground application, Professor Eric Dankwa of the West African Center for Crop Improvement. One thing I was very impressed with, Professor Dankwa, is you've introduced something your center has, something like 200 crop varieties, improved crop varieties, into the market just in the last couple of years. So that's a huge achievement. And I know overall the Waki Center at the University of Ghana is quite renowned for setting very high standards of research and excellence. So let me ask you, as sort of the ACE initiative enters its final phase, what concrete measures are you taking to ensure that all this what you've achieved can sort of be sustained, but also scaled up further? Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to first acknowledge the World Bank for the audacity to launch the African Centers of Excellence project. I believe it was a stitch in time. I would also like to acknowledge my Honorable Minister of Education and his deputy. I believe I would like to speak to governments of Africa as I close, and it's important that I acknowledge the Honorable Minister. The West Africa Center for Crop Improvement celebrated its sabbatical year at the time that the ACE project was established. We had spent 7 years. How we got on board the ACE project was because of the excellence which was inbuilt into our program from inception. What did we do? We partnered with Cornell University and about 10 partners from the sub-region, that was West and Central Africa, and enrolled some of the brightest people in Africa onto our program in 2008, February. We started in 2007. Over 7 years of the project, we received over $11.5 million from the funder. That is the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa. With that level of funding upfront, what couldn't you do? We established a center that can stand its own anywhere in the world. Of course, excellence, very important, and also leadership that could stand its own anywhere in the world. And when I talk about leadership, I'm talking about 360 degrees leadership. Everyone at Waki is a leader. With the World Bank project coming on board and ending in the next few months, we have a number of concrete measures that we have put in place. Number one, of course, we live in a university. We are a semi-autonomous unit in the University of Ghana with financial semi-autonomy and, of course, with a structure that is sustainable. And so we have built sustainability into the project, which is very, very important. The second thing that we have done is the next generation of leaders, how we have developed them. We have, our succession plan has been solid, and we have ensured that we have developed leaders who can stand their own anywhere in the world, who will be taking over from us quite soon, so they can take the project forward. I think that is very, very important. What we also did, which is exceptional, is that we aligned with the University of Ghana's strategic priorities. And so when the Vice Chancellor is going, he carries the center along because he knows precisely what the center is doing. Recently, what we did was to launch the Waki 3.0 project. We went to Silver Spring in the US to announce to the world what we had done over the last 17 years. Training 120 PhDs for 15 countries in Africa, releasing 260 varieties plus, and also training game changers who can stand their own anywhere in the 15 countries, who are leaders and have constituted a community of practice working with us so that we can take our project forward. So together with them, we are submitting grants and we are winning funding to take our work forward. What we have also done is to build financial resilience. That has to do with an endowment which will take us forward. Of course, we launched an endowment of $50 million. We believe that we haven't reached that level yet, but we are beginning to mobilize funding from diverse streams. And we believe that the funding that we need to take our project forward, we can have. So financial sustainability has been very important. Also, the community of practice of scientists from all over the world. What we did was to lead the establishment of the African Plant Breeders Association, which is a biannual meeting that we hold in Africa. So we constitute research consortia to drive the research agenda on the continent. So basically what we have done is to build the next generation of leaders, mobilize funding to take our project forward, and also develop varieties that we are beginning to commercialize. And commercialization of our varieties, quite recently, we talked about creating a commercial, if you like, enterprise in the center. We believe creation of the commercial enterprise is what is going to take us forward. And so we are working with government. We have spoken to the present government, the Directorate for Agribusiness and Agriculture in the present government. We are talking to also the 24-hour economy. We believe that governments in Africa have to come on board conversations like this.
Very good.
And we hope that we can take the work forward.
Thank you, Professor Dankwa. And clearly lots to tell. And what I liked about Professor Dankwa's intervention is very concrete measures to assure the sustainability of these great achievements at the Waki Center. Now let's zoom out. Let's leave the campus and go to the higher continental level and turn to the African Union. We have Ms. Sophie Ashipala. She's the head of education at the African Union. And I know as part of the Agenda 2063, the AU has also developed a science, technology, and innovation strategy for Africa. So, Ms. Ashipala, can you tell us a little bit about how can the ACE initiative, all these centers, we heard about it, 80 centers attached to 50 universities across 20 countries, how can they support the achievement of the AU's strategy? And does the AU have any incentive schemes for these ACEs or other centers to continue working across borders?
Thank you very much, moderator, for the question. First of all, we commend the organizers for extending the invitation to the African Union. We are really happy to be here. To respond to your question, under the framework of Agenda 2063, as you have said, the African Union recognized that science, technology, and innovation are the key drivers of inclusive growth and sustainable development. So in that spirit, the STIZA was designed really to reposition the continent as a key player in the knowledge economy by nurturing research and innovation ecosystem across Africa. Just for further information, STIZA is Science, Technology, and Innovation Strategy for Africa. It was reviewed during 2023 and 2024. A new strategy was developed. Many of you have been part of this process and has also contributed to the development of that new strategy. It was endorsed lately in February by the Executive Council of the African Union. So this is the strategy we are talking about. So the Center of Excellence are central to the vision, to this specific vision, because these are the institutions by design represent the powerful platform to support the implementation of STIZA. And just to mention in which way that they can support the implementation of STIZA, knowledge generation and research excellence, because the Center of Excellence, they are producing cutting-edge research. We cannot repeat that. The VC speech has spoken boldly on these ones, on the priority like health, climate, science, agriculture, ICTs, and these are directly aligned with STIZA thematic priorities. So we believe that this, the centers of excellence can really help in the implementation of STIZA because of the work that they are doing. Also through innovation and technology transfer, by fostering partnership, collaboration with industries, and also promoting entrepreneurship. The talent development also and retention to develop the talent of African scientists. This is what the Center of Excellence is doing, and also to make sure that those talents are being retained, to retain the scientists within Africa, policy support, and thought leadership.
Mr. President, we were down to our last speaker. They thought they were speaking last, but it turns out to be the best speaking slot of the whole morning, because we will now turn to Gabrielle Leroux, who's the higher education lead for the Agence Française de Développement. And I'd like to acknowledge AFD, first of all, before I even ask you a question, because you've been a big financier of the ACE project over the last 10 years, co-financing projects in Benin and Nigeria, and being the sole financier of the ACE project in Côte d'Ivoire. So thank you so much for that. I just wanted to ask you, Gabrielle, you know, it's becoming an increasingly tight environment for development assistance, sadly, in many parts of the world. How do you see development partners playing a role in ACE going forward? And what are some of the things that universities and centers can get from development partners in other ways to achieve the goals that we've heard about this morning?
Thank you, Frank. Avant toute chose, je tenais à adresser rapidement mes plus sincères remerciements aux autorités ghanéennes, aux équipes ici, pour leur formidable accueil. Grand merci également à l'AUA, à la Banque mondiale, partenaire privilégié pour la qualité de notre collaboration ces dernières années autour du programme ACE. Et enfin, un grand merci et un grand bravo, évidemment, à tous les centres d'excellence et à leurs ministères partenaires qui se sont engagés il y a presque 10 ans pour certains dans un programme de transformation d'ampleur. Sachez-le, nous sommes très fiers d'avoir pu, aux côtés de la Banque mondiale et de l'AUA, accompagner ce programme régional. Alors, pour répondre à votre question, qui n'est pas la plus facile, évidemment, le resserrement des budgets concerne la plupart des partenaires de développement de manière plus ou moins marquée. Cela étant dit, nous sommes convaincus que le renforcement des systèmes d'enseignement supérieur et de recherche doit rester une priorité pour nous, pour les États, comme cela a été dit et répété par les autres partenaires. Nous le savons et nous l'avons bien vu ce matin dans l'ensemble des discours d'ouverture à quel point les universités ont un rôle clé à jouer pour atteindre les objectifs de développement durable, à la fois en termes de développement de compétences, en termes de production scientifique. Et à nouveau, je ne m'étendrai pas là-dessus compte tenu du temps limité, mais on a vu ce matin toutes ces formidables réussites, toutes ces innovations sociales, technologiques, environnementales qui sont le fruit de ce programme des centres d'excellence africains. Donc je disais, le soutien à l'enseignement supérieur, à la recherche doit rester une priorité, à la fois pour les États et pour les partenaires de développement. Très rapidement, à l'AFD, nous soutenons aujourd'hui plus de 110 établissements d'enseignement supérieur africains pour près de 400 millions d'euros actuellement en cours de déploiement. Et nous répondons et nous continuerons, je le redis dans la minute qui me reste, à répondre à la demande de nos partenaires avec une triple ambition. La première, c'est développer des formations qui soient pertinentes, qui répondent aux besoins des partenaires économiques localement. C'est un point majeur pour nous. La seconde, l'amélioration de la qualité des formations, de la recherche et, ce qui est particulièrement important, une recherche qui soit alignée avec les agendas de développement nationaux et qui rayonne également à l'international. Et puis, une attention particulière sur l'accès, la réussite de tous dans ces filières d'enseignement supérieur et notamment des jeunes femmes. Et c'est aussi pour cette raison qu'on accompagne non seulement les universités, mais aussi nos partenaires dans le développement, par exemple, de logements étudiants. Je sais que plusieurs de nos partenaires rwandais, nigérians et ivoiriens qu'on a pu accompagner sur ce volet sont ici. Donc pour conclure, évidemment, le resserrement des budgets va aller de pair avec des exigences de redevabilité plus fortes, mais collectivement, je pense qu'on saura faire ce travail de plaidoyer pour renforcer les investissements en faveur de l'enseignement supérieur et de la recherche. Je vous remercie.
Thank you so much, Gabrielle. And maybe I'll ask you once more for a big round of applause for all of our panelists from government, universities, the African Union, and AFD. Thank you so much. I think we'll exit the stage on the left.